Howdy folks, Rudros here, and welcome to the final part of my Opus 23 set review, and I am of course joined by Mr. Ghoul02 himself. Ghoul, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk about these.
Excellent. If you missed parts 1 and 2 where we talked about the 6 main elements, you can check them out in the link for the description below, or the special boxes that pop up at the end of these. Otherwise, we're going to get into the light and dark cards, and then jump right into those juicy limit breaks. Ghoul, you ready?
Let's do it.
So first we have Vana, which is our light legend. You've probably heard me say it if you watch these other reviews. I'm not a big crystal guy. I do think this card is neat. I like the idea of it. I like that it gives itself the crystals for its effects. You can, in theory, block with it, kill something that's 9k or less, and then pay a crystal on exit to also just yeet something else off the field, permanently remove it from the game. That's awesome. I like that it can just search anything out too. If you can combine this with anything that's feeding you crystals, this seems like a fun package. Is it worth the light and dark slot? Not for me. I feel like Shinryu has just become so freaking important in that slot that I just can't see giving up that card for something like this. But again, I'm just not a crystal guy myself anyway, so for what it does, I think it's really cool. It's just not for me.
So my first reaction was, when they first spoiled this, we saw this like right after kind of, I want to say, Nationals last year, when like Shinryu really showed how important and powerful Shinryu is.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at this, and I looked at Shinryu, and I said, why would I ever play this over Shinryu? was my first thought. And I will say, my opinion has improved on it over time. I think that there's a lot of like little things, again, that make this card maybe better than I was giving it credit for initially. So no matter what, you probably get at least one of these two modes. And I used to play Xenos in Mono Wind as like this sticky body that, like, if I'm against aggro, I can like make them not want to play the game, but also like, you know, I think she fits that slot very well, right? If they kill her, guess what? I'm going to undo some of your aggro plans. If they don't kill her, I can search any card in my deck. Both of those modes are really, really, really strong. And I thought a little more. And honestly, she doesn't need a lot of crystals. She needs you to make a single crystal, and she has all of her text. You get to both search for anything and then kill something when she leaves the field if she goes to the break zone. That's a really low bar to clear.
True.
Then I realized one more small thing, and I just realized this recently. Y'shtola can give haste to any category 14 forward.
True. That is true.
So you can give her haste with Y'shtola and then search for any card in your deck. That's also really strong. And you can do that at instant speed. You can do that on your opponent's turn when like they do something. Oh, whoa. Y'shtola, give Venat haste. Venat, go search. Medine, Amaterasu, Mistrak, whatever the card is that like I need to win the game right there, I can do it. That's really powerful. And Scions want a single Category 14 standard unit backup anyway, because Grahatia exists.
True. Yeah.
I wonder if there are some standard unit 14 backups that make crystals on entry.
Might be one or two.
Yeah, there's a couple. You know, there's maybe one of those in every element. So, I don't know if she's the best light dark card you can play in Scions. I don't know if she's the best thing you can do in Wind. I don't know if she like is an extra way of generating crystals for X and Melee. But there's enough to like here that I think she has a chance. And I'll give her that.
He's giving her a chance. We'll see where she ends up. Next, we have Alua, who, based on her old Opus 5 hero, I always thought she was like a heroine, but this picture kind of makes her look like a villain, and she's the dark card. Is she a villain? I've never played Tactics Advanced 2, so...
Yeah, she's the bad guy.
Okay. Oh, man. Alua, you're breaking my heart. I never knew. Granted, Shoal is such an absurd special. I should have known she was a villain all those days. I mean, this card's like... I like the design. I like that you get something regardless of how many backups you have. You know, it's not like, oh, until you get 4, she does absolutely nothing. It's like, nope, if you don't have enough, you know, she's just going to shrink something. If you have enough, she can't be blocked. Clearly, the idea is that you just push damage with her, but that's also the only thing she does, is she just kind of tries to push damage. And if they have 2 forwards, yeah, you can shrink one, but she's just a 7k. They'll just step in front of it with the other one, right? Like, I think we're just... surely there's better things to be doing with a light and dark slot at this point, so I find this card incredibly underwhelming.
Yeah, it's cute. The concept's really cool. Like I like the idea of like early on she's like doing damage, removing things, and then like when you're like set up, okay, it's go time. You know, I
Yeah.
can't be blocked. I don't know why she can't do both. You know, like why is it that like the second effect could just be like if you have or when she attacks, she's a forward, it loses 5,000 power, and then at 4 or more backups, she can't be blocked. That would not have broken the card at all.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think she still would see no play if that was the text on the card, because I really don't think that you can afford to play a dark card like this most of the time.
Yeah.
Like, is this better than Kadaj, for instance? Which is like,
Yeah.
Kadaj is the bar for dark cards. If you're not above Kadaj, you're not seeing play.
Yep.
And there's no FFTA2 synergies either. Like, what's the FFTA2? You can search her with Civ Clan Gully. Do we care? Does that matter? That like she's every light and dark card can be searched, right?
Yeah.
There's not like a FFTA2 tribal thing. Like there's like the Luso Opus 14 that like reveals 5 and adds an FFTA2 card. That was enlightening. You would get the other Olua before you did that. Like it's special fodder for the other Olua, but it's dark special fodder, which is the worst type of special fodder you can have.
Right.
She'll be really good and limited because she's going to be either removal or unblockable with haste and well above curve. But I cannot imagine this card taking a slot in the deck outside of that.
Preach, brother, preach. Well, you mentioned Kadaj. We know he's a 4-cost 9K. So here, if he's the bar, let me give you a 4-cost 9K dark card. This is Chaos, but not the Chaos Arc variety. This, okay, so at its worst, I don't like this card at all. I think it's too bricky. I think it's too pie in the sky. I think it's too XYZ. However, I know some people are like, so here's what you do, right? They put out their first forward. You put down Chaos. Doesn't matter if you have enough in the break zone because you immediately flare, load up your break zone with 10, you hit them for a point of damage, and then, of course, you naturally milled into your 5-job Chaos, which you then remove, or monsters, and then they have to kill that forward and they discard 2 cards. That's a lot for 4 CP, technically 6 because of the special you used. And the special is cool that it's just direct damage, so if you're in some kind of stalemate and you get to damage 6, you'll be like, oh, well, flare, you're dead. That being said, 10 cards is a lot, so if the game is going on late enough, you might kill yourself by doing that. I can see the potential, but when you have something as reliable as Chaos Arc, again, in Dark, okay, well, that's the bar for me. Like, and yes, that deck can be a little bricky at times, but I just don't see it with this one. I know I'm going to lose to it. I know I'm going to see somebody on stream go, oh my god, they did the flare out of nowhere. Like, and that's cool, but I just, this ain't for me. Go ahead.
Oh, this card's really strong. This is Chaos Arc with the Arc built in, potentially. For the cost of playing monsters in Opus 23, oh no, there's none of those we want to play.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be specific decks. The job Chaos might as well read card name Chaos. It's like, no one's playing any...
You're not playing Tiamat to get this to work.
But you only have to have 4 monsters other than Chaos if you go Chaos Flame.
True.
Which is cool. I do also like the... it's funny because you can't play him with it, but the Earth Chaos has an ability if you have multiple Dark Chaos or Dark cards in your break zone, just remove it into Dark cards to kill something.
Yeah.
Like you're self-milling, maybe you just mill into like extra copies of Chaos for that. I think that your opponent sacrifices a forward and discards 2 cards for this is relatively cheap. It's going to have to go in pretty specific decks. I do think that the Mill 10 is a little bit scary just because, like, those Realm decks do not have that many cards left in deck after they resolve Realm.
Yeah.
They're drawing cards, they're doing things. I think there's going to have to be some testing done on if this is going to kill themselves too quickly by deck out, or maybe 10 mill, you accidentally end up milling cards you really don't want to mill sometimes. I really, like... You don't want to play around that. I don't think that's a problem, but it does mean that if you're playing a Chaos deck, you probably have to play 2 copies of every relevant card, because if you mill the 10, kind of plays like a Pot of Desires in Yu-Gi-Oh, where it's like when you mill 10, if you mill all of your copies of a key card, you're kind of screwed potentially.
Yeah.
But that's really strong for really low cost.
All right. Well, that is light and dark. Very quick. So let's move on to those juicy limit breaks with one of my favorite characters in Final Fantasy. Arden. They have tried to make very many different versions of this card with his theme of like revival and that he keeps coming back because that's what happens in the game. How is this limit break? Like, the effect is cool. I like the effect. It's cool to see them at least try to use the limit break deck in a different way so soon into it that, hey, what if you can actually spend them and just he keeps reviving from it? That being said, you are still limited by the number in your limit break deck, so the most times you can do this is 3. Him being fire is actually kind of relevant because, like, if you're on Magissa, you're never going to get to Montleonis, and, you know, Zach is, like, okay, but so there wasn't, like, this banger standout fire card, so he's not technically competing with a whole lot, again, unless you are going on that Montleonis plan, but 6 CP for what is essentially just a body is like, he still dies to Warrior Light. He's a limit break card, so he is vulnerable to things like bounce, spin to the top of your deck. That just removes the effect. He still technically has to die to the break zone, so that kind of sucks. And then he comes in dull. Like, could he really not have come in active? He costs 6. If he costs like 4 or less, even then, I don't know if I'd want to play him, but I'd be more inclined. But that 6 in the corner is just making me be like, I can't do that. I can't pay that much.
I mean, he does cost the same as a 4 CP forward. If he was in your hand, he's a 4 CP 10k with Brave. It's a really big beat stick.
He's a big body.
And there's a lot of kind of funny things about this card. I mean, 10k Brave, there are decks that can't get over that. If you're an aggro deck, maybe like you're, 13, right?
Mm-hmm.
13 can't get over a 10k Brave very easily. They're going to have to start crashing their guys into Arden and feel really bad about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's relevant. I think that the Brave is really cool because it means he can attack without you can block with him with impunity because you can also attack with him. Yeah. And then if he dies, you need him to die to get the value. Because I think if you get this guy 3 times for 6 CP, you feel pretty good.
Yeah.
I also think it's really funny that you can. They did this in the wrong order for some reason. You get to play one from your deck first, then you turn one face up. So if you have an Arden in your limit break deck as your last LB card, and then you play him, you can play him from your extra deck and then turn one of your limit break cards face up. Oh, I don't have one. Oh well. And you can kind of cheat the last LB card.
That works that way? They let you do that?
As it's written, it should if you do so.
Huh. Interesting.
Someone can correct me if they put a different ruling out, but the way this is worded, you play it first, and then you turn one face down, one face up. If you don't have one, if you try to discard a card, you don't have a card in hand, you don't have to do it. So I imagine that should work the same way, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Unless they rule to the contrary, you're right. The way it's written, that would make sense.
So that feels like an oversight to me. I don't think that was intended, but it does mean you can go like a Vincent Arden dies, Arden dies, Arden, and you can still do that.
Huh.
Which is kind of a very strange thing to see. It's just a cool card. I mean, I really like a lot of things. I don't know how many decks are going to play him. And if they do, how often does he hit the field? He reminds me a little bit of Leela in a way as a card that doesn't do anything on entry and just does kind of one thing. But maybe except anti-aggro could be interesting. It could be interesting when he fired. I have to see him and see how he feels, I think. This is just such a strange card to evaluate. Because there are times I would absolutely pay 4 for a 4 CP for a card that does nothing but be a big bungus that sits there and my opponent can't get rid of easily.
Right. Good old Arden the Big Bungus. Well, we'll see how you feel about the other fire limit break. This is Vincent. So I never played Crisis Core. Someone's going to have to tell me. Did Vincent, was he obsessed with calling for backup? Because all his cards want to deal with backups. It's kind of funny how similar this is to his Opus 9 version, which also sacrificed a backup, but that shot a dull forward for 8,000. This just shoots any forward for 9,000. Doesn't have to be dull, which is nice. And the first strike is nice too. You know me, I don't really like to sacrifice my backup, so this card isn't really my style, and it does suck he can die to Amaterasu after you've already sacrificed the backup. That's going to feel terrible if that happens. That being said, Montleonis was clearly the high end of that deck, but a lot of decks weren't running for the Montleonis, and Zach's 3k ping very rarely, other than a Leo, actually killed something entirely on its own. So it is nice that Fire does now have a limit break that 9K is going to kill something. So I think this Vincent will see play and will be good just because of that. He kind of is at odds with Montleonis because, again, he's getting rid of backups that Montleonis wants to see. I wouldn't be surprised to see this one get replaced as more and more fire limit breaks come out. But for where it's at right now, I think most fire decks are going to be glad to have him.
Oh, I think this goes a lot of places that are not even necessarily fire decks. I think this card's very strong, actually. This is a 3 CP forward that kills Une.
True.
And sure, it's going to suck
five,
because
by
Une's
the
going
way.
to bounce. Because Une is going to bounce one of your backups, and then Vincent's going to sacrifice a second backup. So you're going down 2 backups to do that.
And that
But
doesn't
it
sound
does
great,
kill
but
the Une.
it does kill it.
It
at
does
least.
kill her, which is the key. You can't let Une sit around, right? But like even going further than that, I think every single Earth deck playing Shantoto should have a copy of this in the Limit Break deck.
Yeah,
Because
that makes
Shantoto
sense.
is a fire backup.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
you can sacrifice the Shantoto into this and kill anything. And then I think an 8K First Strike is actually pretty relevant as well. I love First Strike as a keyword on cards that could be used defensively.
Mm-hmm.
So now nothing that is 8K or lower can attack over Vincent without help. I think that's really important as well. I think this card is a slam dunk, one of the best cards in the set. I think this goes in so many decks. And I mean, I can talk about it a little bit more at the end, but one of the coolest things about this set, I've started, like, Materia Hunter just updated a couple days ago, and I've started deck building, and realizing that I have to make decisions on my Limit Break deck is such a cool and freeing feeling from, all right, Leo, Zach, Shantoto, we'll fill out one Leela, like, it was like autopilot. It's not autopilot anymore. I'm making decisions in my Limit Break deck, which is so much fun and so cool. It really feels like the promise of what Limit Break could be is being fulfilled a little bit. I'm very happy to see it.
I'm glad to hear that. Well, let's see what you think of the ice ones. Here we have Kuja. So, like, the whole action ability, dull something you have to dull one of their forwards is always very, very strong, especially when you can do it on their turn, which you can absolutely do with Kuja. That being said, the whole can't be chosen, or not can't be chosen, but if you choose them kind of punish effect in ice, I don't know, has just never really seemed to take off. Like, there's quite a few ice forwards that have had that text, and there's never been one that's like, wow, this one's a standout. And again, in the current meta we're in, like, Refia doesn't care about this. Oh, yeah, on the stack, I'm going to spin Kuja. Oh, yeah, you froze her. Anyway, she stands back up with all of her buddies, so that's completely irrelevant. Now, granted, if you're playing a more fair deck, yeah, I think Kuja can absolutely just, like, stall you out. But a single, like, I don't think it's that punishing to choose him either, because it's a single freeze. Like, if you have to choose him once to get rid of it, I think you'll be okay with one of your forwards getting froze. If you can freeze characters, I think that'd be pretty crazy. So, again, I wasn't over the moon about the ice limit breaks last set, so I think he is going to ultimately be better than those, because he's kind of more continued value than Surgis. Like, do you even want to play Surgis anymore now that you've got this guy? But I'm not quite as high on him as I've seen some people who are like, oh my god, this is the best card ever. I was like, yeah, he's very good. I just don't think he's that good. Go ahead.
I mean, Surgis is one of the best limit breaks in the game. He's got a very obnoxious partner to clear, honestly, because Surgis does so much to guarantee lethal for aggro decks. That said, a lot of what Surgis does, if the game doesn't end that turn, Kuja kind of does better. I will say, my initial reaction to reading Kuja was, what the hell, this card sucks. Why would I play this? But thinking about it more, there have been decks that play Diana unironically.
Yeah.
With very little hope of, like, if I spike it off a Warrior Blight, I get the draw. But if I don't spike it off the Warrior Blight, I will still cast this for 3 and use it as just a mechanism to dull my opponent's forwards every single time.
Yeah.
This is that with upside in a way. Like, this is a Diana that does other things in a way. That's kind of, I've had to, like, reevaluate, like, 'cause I had higher hopes for this card than what it is. Like, well, this just does what Surgis does, but now for more CP and it gets removed, it's even worse. Like, okay, cool, it's got, like, the Punisher effect on being chosen, but they don't have to choose. Like, what makes them choose this card, right?
Yeah.
But it really is, like, obnoxious if you've ever played into, like, a Lilith set, like the Dancer deck or Warriors of Darkness, and it's like, okay, I'm going to go to combat. Well, before you attack, this thing can't attack, that thing can't attack, that thing can't attack, because they're all dull now. And then it goes back to my turn, and they're dull, so I get to attack anyway.
Yeah.
And then it goes back to your turn, it's like, that's dull, that's dull, that's dull. And, like, you have to get rid of these cards. They're so frustratingly difficult to get around. So I think in that context, Kuja is good. I don't know what turn you take off to play him. I don't know if there's an icy mid-range deck that maybe like an Ice Lightning loves this guy.
Yeah.
Like, like Ice Lightning isn't like super aggressive. It's okay, like taking a turn off to like stick a Kuja maybe. I could see that.
I amend what I said earlier about Surges too. Like, I don't think aggro decks can afford to play this guy if they're trying to go in on their aggro plan. So Surges makes more sense for those.
Yeah.
Well, you did.
Yeah, but
go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, much better card than I thought it was on first week.
Well, I'm going to mirror what you said when I first read this card, I thought it sucked. Guess what? I still think this card sucks. This is the other ice legend with Cecil. This is the Limit Break legend, which I was looking forward to from last set because I was like, okay, as crazy as they made Montleonis and Tidus, and you could even argue Ace to a degree, like, surely they will bring that same level of wow to all the legends for the 3 we didn't get. That's why they made us wait. They didn't have to make us wait. They could have given us all of them at once. They made us wait. I would like to keep waiting, please, because Kate Sith is so it's Limit Break 3. So at most you're casting it twice, which means you're not using anything else. It costs 6. It's an 8K, so it can be Amaterasu. And then you have to have 5 ice backups for it to do anything. And then it freezes all backups they control. It doesn't even dull them. It just freezes them. And you get the discard. Like I'm sorry, Kurosame kind of showed last set that like long-term ice on its own is not a thing. And this wouldn't even fit in that kind of like hybrid ice earth build you and I built where like Rydia was kind of the only earth backup. No, you have to have 5 specific ice backups. Like, it's so bad. It's so bad. Why? I'm very disappointed.
I don't think this card is great. I think it's a little better than bad. I don't think there's a deck that plays this currently. I will say that outright. You cannot play Mono Ice currently because Mono Ice does not function. There is not enough removal. You can just beat Mono Ice by going super wide and daring your opponent to deal with 8 million forwards.
Mm-hmm.
This card doesn't change that. That's why Kurosame really struggled to take off, despite Kurosame having the most ridiculous text ever printed on it, which is discard 5. However, in a hypothetical world where 5 ice backup is a thing you can realistically do and have a decent chance at winning the game, casting 2 of these is going to be a pain in the ass for your opponent to deal with. It's going to hurt. Especially if you can like get them off the field yourself and do it again the next turn, and like for 2 turns your opponent cannot use any of their backups if they used them previously, and they discard a card each turn. That's like, I know that's the dream. Maybe we never get to that world. Maybe by the time that Ice can be played mono in a deck that wants to play 5 backups, then there's another Limit Break that's been printed that you already want to play, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I sort of get what they're going for with it. I see the lore. I don't think there's a deck that supports this in a way that makes it play.
Yeah, well, and I see kind of we've talked about what they're pushing certain elements towards between the Kurosame, the Emina. Someone there wants you to build ice backups, and that's fine. But like you said, they don't have any removal, so the only version of ice that has worked recently is Turbo Ice Discard. Like, I would love to live in that hypothetical world where getting to 5 reliably for Kate Sith is a good thing, but I don't think that is this world. Maybe one day.
I too would like it if Ice would stop playing Lufenian and Argath and all these other stupid, obnoxious idiots. Like, I would love to be in that world, but we're not. If that world comes up, I do think Kate Sith is going to be relatively strong, but he does not fix the problems that Mono Ice has by himself.
Well said.
Because again, this is free. You don't have to run this in your deck. If you get to that situation and you didn't burn your Limit Break deck, it's going to feel really, really good to hold this. It doesn't win the game in the same way that Montleonis did. It doesn't, wipe the board in the way that Ace kind of tried to fix the problem with Mono Wind. It doesn't do whatever the hell they thought Tidus was supposed to do.
Yeah.
But it does do something very powerful. If it gets there.
which it won't. Next, we have Sid Highwind, who has always struggled to get a good card, and this is arguably one of his best ones. Again, like a lot of cards I've said this set, that's not necessarily saying a whole lot. I have no idea why he has only 4,000 power. Just give him 5. Like that just feels like a we hate Sid Highwind, so I'm just jab him in the side right when he thought he had 5,000. So he's the best wind limit break because, you know, Yuri exists and Ace exists, and both of those were relatively unplayable. So that's not a high ceiling to clear. That being said, like, I mean, I don't hate it as a, oh man, I totally bricked in wind, I need to see backups. Well, on curve, I'll just put the Sid out there and hope I get one. But it's reveal 3, which is not very much, and a lot of wind decks have tried to cheat backup counts as is anyway, because they just want to hit that Norse Talon Chocobo Sam opening, so I don't really know what the math on this guy is, but he could very easily whiff. And then if you do see your opening and you curve out, I don't know if you ever even want to cast this guy, other than, well, maybe you just want another cast in a wind deck. So, like, I don't hate him. I do think he's fine, but I'm also still a little underwhelmed by him, by how specific he is. And why does he have 4,000 power? Come on, give him some love. Why couldn't he have been an 8K? A 5K at minimum. Go ahead.
It's because he's a smoker.
He's hurt himself. That's what it is.
No, actually, I will say this is, I think, one of my favorite limit break designs they've ever had. I think the worst feeling in the game is when you mulligan a hand, draw your new hand, and it has no backing.
Mm-hmm.
And for wind in particular, that is the most crippling thing. You're not happy to play this tournament, but you will.
Sure, yeah.
And the other thing is, and I was thinking about this the other day, I actually lost in Wollongong because I opened 2 backups in Rapia Control, a deck with 18 backups. Keep. Play backup, saw no backups again for the next 5 turns. I would have killed for this card in that matchup. It would have saved me. This card would have won me the game if he existed at the time. Because the problem is, like, I can Leo and draw a single card, and I draw 2 cards each turn. You're really not that likely to draw into a backup if you're really desperate for one deck. I really think this is one of the best designed cards they've ever printed. It's fair. It legitimately fixes a problem with the game, which is that if you open a hand with no backup after your mulligan, you're done. Like, mono wind especially, like, what are you going to do? You're going to, like, play Zidane for nothing, and, like, maybe I'll hit a backup or something that I use 8 turns from now. Like, you just lose the game. And then, like, I'm sure mono wind is probably going to play multiple of this guy to try to get the cast count up because they don't have any better options.
Yeah.
I will get to that part in a little bit, but no, I adore this card. It's one of my favorite cards in the set. Like I said, to me, the thing where people say, like, well, does Limit Break fix a problem with the game? Does it make it better? This is a card that I think genuinely tries to make Final Fantasy TCG a better card game, and I'm happy to see that.
Fair enough. Well, speaking of making a better card game, what we have next is one of my favorite cards in the game. I think it is insanely powerful and absolutely gorgeous. I mean, look at those sunken eyes. Look at those claws. Mr. Amano, you have done yourself. Oh my gosh, I just noticed there's someone standing there. That's like Terra or Celis, like someone standing on the bridge. Like, everything about this card just blew me away when I saw it. Of course, I'm talking strictly about the artwork because the card itself is garbage. And just go watch Ghoul's stream if you just want to see a great reaction. Like, Wind was dying for good limit breaks, and just this is one of those instances where they absolutely went for flavor over anything else because, oh, get it? He casts level 5 death on you. Yes, that's cool in the game. But that makes this card worthless. And he costs 7. Why does he cost 7? And he can be Amaterasu. Why is he not a 9K? He costs 7. The art is amazing. This is some of my favorite Amano artwork, and I always loved that fight in Final Fantasy VI. It was such a cool thing, and it scared the crap out of you when you were a kid, and you got attacked on your airship. Like... This art deserved so much better than this.
The more you read this card, the worse he gets. It's mandatory. If you play this for some unholy reason and you have a Yuffie on the field and your opponent doesn't have a target, you have to shoot your own Yuffie because that was necessary. It's Limit Break 2. The there are no Limit Break 2s in Win that you want to play. Yuri is just kindling at this point as a Limit Break 2. There were Wind X decks that did not play a single Wind Limit Break last set. And in my Retainer Storm deck, after the first tourney, I took out the ace even. There was not a single Wind Limit Break in my Wind X Storm deck. Water had 2 absolute bangers last set. Lightning had absolute bangers last set. Earths were solid. All these limit breaks, there was such a high burden on limit breaks to be good across the board. Because if they're not all good across the board, you have the Leo Tidus problem where everybody's going to poach them, right? Which is what ended up happening. Wynn's limit breaks were so bad that they were running Philo to poach Leo and Tidus. Yeah. That is how unimpactful and terrible the Wynn limit breaks were last time. They needed a banger. They needed a card that you look at and go, oh my god, I can't believe they printed this on a Wynn card. They got that. They got that reaction.
Yeah, they got that all right.
What are they thinking? I'm not even happy using this to oh wow, this breaks Corilla. Cool. If your Knight's opponent sees you break Corilla with this, they're gonna laugh at you and then they're gonna kill you. It's almost actively bad to kill Corilla because then they play another one and do it again. It doesn't hit Une, which can be a problem sometimes. You have to if you kill Une, I would be okay.
Yeah.
Okay, the card is bad, but it kills Une. It doesn't kill Une. It doesn't kill the most important card. I guess it kills Man in Black after Man in Black has already recurred a summon. I don't want to be in this timeline. Show me the next set's limit breaks and just give me a time machine to send them backwards because right now there is not a Wind limit break outside of Sid, who is mostly intended to make sure that Wind can't break.
Yeah. I never thought I'd feel sorry for Wind, but I kind of do. All right, well here, this next one will cheer you up. So here we have some also great Amano art. This is Aiko with her little Moogle there. What was her Moogle? Moglin? I can't remember what her Moogle's name was, but this is Aiko with her Moogle. This is an actual good limit break Earth legendary one. The first text is entirely saved by the fact that it also counts summons that are removed from game, because otherwise you'd hate to have someone just miss drag and get rid of this because she can't also be Amaterasu. She's a summoner, of course. Well, not that really matters because she's coming from your limit break deck, so it's not like you can search her out or anything. But very strong text. Hey, go search out any summon from the game, cast it immediately. Now, because this doesn't take up deck space, this is absolutely great. My one, maybe not concern, I guess my question is, so for the same amount, you can also play Une, who recurs endlessly, and while searching out Arc and casting it for free is awesome, obviously Chaos Arc does that very, very well too, and this is probably personal sour grapes for me, but when I tend to play cards like this, by the time I get to them, I don't have many good search targets left. It'd be kind of cool if you could either search or pull it back from your break zone. Maybe they think that was too strong. So I am kind of wondering what is the big target you want to use off of this? Is it Arc? Is it Old Arc, the 10 cost one? Although that does hit your own board. Is it Phoenix? Is it 7 cost Phoenix? A summon I've always loved, but was realistically just too expensive to use all the time. So at least this one's interesting and it gives you fun ideas to think about. And again, even if they remove all your summons, it's still live, which is such a strong effect to put on this. So unlike our last one, this one is actually enjoyable to think about and plan around. Go ahead.
I mean, this is one of my favorite cards in this set. And the more I've thought about it, I don't think this card is completely broken. And there's a lot of really interesting design decisions they made with this card. For anybody that's not familiar, because I'm going to use a Yu-Gi-Oh term here. There's a term in Yu-Gi-Oh called a Garnet, which is a card that is a combo piece that works if the card is in your deck, but the moment it hits your hand, the card no longer works. And they were clearly very scared of this idea that you could run a summon in your deck that you don't want to draw, and then you could Ico it out and do that. Because you have to have seen 9 summons, and if you see that Garnet in your deck before you get to this point, it doesn't work anymore, right? Unless you get it back in the deck with a Lapre or God forbid, like a Unalesca. Like
or Scholar or something.
Or no, she's water, wasn't she? But I think that's like a really fun design space there, because then it means, well, I probably need to play a lot of summons, and then what's the value summons that I can realistically am okay with playing and drawing that a Limit Break 3 is worth doing. I think that Phoenix is the really big one. You know, Earth Water Summoners is already a deck. Phoenix, nuke that for a bunch of damage, play a Garnet, get back one of my 9 summons in the break zone seems really strong.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think like the big high in the sky one is probably like a 10 cost Arc or Fat Chocobo.
Yeah, those are good targets.
As like just like a board wipe. Fat Chocobo is the one that like you're okay with drawing, but like this then becomes like Limit Break 3 8k to all of your opponent's forwards, which is pretty cool. Arc is every forward loses 8,000 power, and then you draw a card for everything that becomes 0. So this would also draw you a card once you did that, which is kind of cool. It'd be like 6 EP, draw a card, and then draw for everything else that dies off of this summon. It's actually pretty neat. I just wonder, and even I guess playing Arc from deck if you still have one in there. If you're playing like Chaos Arc, you're probably going to play this. It's going to be like fine when it comes up. I don't think it's going to be broken in that situation, but the fact that this card goes in these different modes of, well, here's like the floor is I'm going to cast a Mind Forward from the deck or something, or a 4 CP limit break, or 6 CP limit break, which is still like, I'm happy for that, right? Like I'm happy to do that, or to like do a Lev 6 that develops a bond. But the ceiling and the way it makes you think about your deck is so far above that I think it's a really fun and exciting card for the game. Earth did not need a mono Earth limit break anyway because they're poaching Tidus, so screw them. They can deal with whatever the hell they're doing and let us have fun with a card like Nico.
Yeah. I wonder how much this will actually see play, or if people be like, you know what, I'm just going to keep leaning into the Tidus more anyway, so this will be a fun one to watch. So you mentioned fun and exciting, so that's the exact opposite of this next card. This is Noctis. He's just very boring and very straightforward. Kusith on a body. Enter, get back and forward. That's it. Susceptible to both Amat and Mist Dragon kind of sucks. I do, like, could he have been 8k? He cost 6. I think he could have been 8. He'd still die to Amaterasu. I don't know if he needed to be 7. But yeah, it's just, Earth will like this. Most decks will like this if they can cast it. There's nothing flashy about it. It's just your basic recursion effect. Yeah.
The only downside to this is 6. You're not happy paying 6 for a Kusith. You will. You absolutely, this guy will see a lot of play. He'll show up a lot. But a lot of time, what he's going to do is you're going to cast him, you're going to get back Raphia from your break zone, and then you're going to pass.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're going to get back Warrior of Light, and then you're going to pass. You're not happy with that. It's not flashy, but it is the kind of a glue staple card that it's nice to see them print this into the game.
Yeah. We need more Amano art, so of course we're going to go to our Lightning Legend Limit Break. This is Edge. Certainly more exciting than the Ice one. But I like what this card represents, because it reminds me of the days of yore when like combat really mattered and you had 5 forwards on the field and they had 5 forwards on the field and you all stood there looking at each other. Who's going to blink? And then Edge comes in and says, attack! And then everyone just goes in and pings them all down. The game isn't really played like that anymore, so I'm just trying to picture this scenario where you like, how many forwards do you need to attack to make this worth it? And it's only 7,000. Not that 7,000 isn't relevant. Obviously, it kills something like Noctis, but if it's got 8k, suddenly that forward's going to be like, oh, I'm going to die anyway? All right, well, let me just step in front of your charge. So he's fine. He obviously fits well in ninjas. He kind of conflicts with the other Edge, but he's a limit break, so not really. He doesn't take up your deck space. Like, I like the card. It does kind of bum me out that so many of the legends this set are Amaterasuable, since Montleonis and Tidus, I thought, kind of set that bar that, like, well, you can do it to stop our effects, but we're not going to die. We're going to stick around anyway. So, yeah, he's fine. I'm not, like, over the moon about him, but he's fine.
Yeah, this is, like, the same level of very solid, good card, but not the game-winning effect that Montleonis or Tidus are.
Mm-hmm.
Which is very strange. You would have think that, again, they would have done this in the opposite order. Like, the really big, powerful game-winning limit breaks come out later. And, like, the staple, solid, like, oh, yeah, you're happy to play this.
Yeah.
Cards would come out first. I like the effect. I mean, it is funny. Job Ninja, for a lot of intents purposes, could say card name Yuffie. Can do 7K. You know, he's not incredible. I do also like that, like, even if you have, like, let's say in theory you have 4 ninjas on the field, and you have Boomer Edge, as my friend calls him. And Boomer Edge has 2 counters. Boomer Edge can ping himself with the shurikens, and then you play this one from the deck or from the limit break deck, and then you can now attack with all of your ninjas for the damage. So like Boomer Edge gets himself off of the field.
Yeah,
that's kind of cool. It's not on the same class as the last set of Legends, but it is a good card. The other small thing that is notable: Lightning has Cloud.
Yeah,
and Cloud is limit break 2. So if you play 1 Cloud and then 1 Edge, you're wasting a limit break Cloud. You basically made your Cloud be an LB3.
Yeah.
And I don't know how happy I am with it. So, good card. We'll see a lot of play. That is the question with it.
Yeah. Well, going in with the Cloud, I think our final Lightning limit break fits really well with Cloud because he's a limit break 1, and he's the only limit break 1 in Lightning currently. So if you cast 2 Cloud, usually Lightning was like, well, all right, I just have nothing to spend that last one on. So now you at least have a card to spend it on. And because it hits Lightning character or 15 character, like, you're never going to pay 5 for this. It's always going to cost you 1. That being said, you know, it's just a big body, but a 1 costs 9k that you are doing because you have no more clouds to use. There are worse things you could do, certainly, with it. So I think Nyx fits kind of a good spot, but obviously he's also just very boring because he's just a body with no extra text.
I mean, the other thing that like kind of comes to mind for this is that when he costs 1, that's really good, isn't it? Like, your opponent Amaterasu is your thing. Well, as a consolation prize, I'm going to Dolomite. I have 1 extra backup. No cards from hand used whatsoever. I just have this spare extra backup. I'm just going to slam a 9k.
Yeah.
Like, that's like kind of fun. There's not that much else to say. I think a lot of people make fun of the movie poster art.
Yeah.
As they called it. It's a little bit strange that, like, it really doesn't work in a Kingslave deck, although Regis discounts this, doesn't it? Like, Regis can make him cost 0 if you had the Regis on the field and had a character die.
Does he? I think he does. Yeah, because it doesn't say can't become 0. So I think he
this doesn't say that. Yeah, so the Regis will make this be a 0 cost forward if something died that turn. Kingslave love to kill themselves. That's like their thing. So that's kind of a fun little, like, thing. I don't think that that's ever going to matter. I mean, I guess it could, because you could in theory play this in a Kingslave deck, and then, I don't have Nyx on the field and something died, so I might as well throw the 9k on the field just so I don't die to something else. Yeah. But weirdly, this card is also funnily good in Retainer Storm because you're on Pyro anyway.
Yeah.
And if they Amaterasu your Noctis, you can play this for 1 and activate your Iris, which is just very funny that it comes up there.
Yeah.
I don't know how relevant that actually is going to be, but it is a thing because Category 15 character includes all of the retainers. So, you know, I'm very happy to see that as the Retainer Storm guy.
Naturally. All right, let's move on from him to water. Here we have Beatrix. We actually got job support in our limit breaks, as we saw with the Edge earlier too. This is a knight. It wants to be around another knights. So, as a knights player last set, I don't really know what to think about this card. Obviously, it name conflicts with the forward Beatrix. Not that Beatrix was like super relevant. Her power buff usually didn't make much of a difference. The cost reduction was good, but you kind of just played her just because she was a knight that Corella could hit. And clearly, the on-attack effect of this is great. I guess one of the quote-unquote downsides of knights is that their hard removal required them to dull 4 attackers out, where this says, no, now I can just clean something else off the battlefield, which is really awesome. And unfortunately, it doesn't count back up, so it still is fitting Ghoul's like hard aggro plan. That being said, this is also a black belt the turn you play it. Knights doesn't naturally have stuff to give other characters haste, so I guess you play Beatrix first, maybe off a Lastwell trigger, and the next turn you go in on like Ramza Corella. Now Beatrix has got the whole army behind her, so she goes in and just like Clim Hazards your opponent. So that's the only part that gives me pause, is that like if you play this the turn with Ramza Corella, she can't attack, and then you're at risk of the board wipe, or maybe you're just going to win anyway. So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they're grateful to have it, but I wonder if this one's going to be a little awkward to use. How do you see her?
My first thought, thank God this card is named Beatrix. If this was named anything else, not Beatrix, now says 2CP, cheat another knight into play.
Mm-hmm.
From nowhere. Just discard a water card, poop out a knight. Even like if it was named Karilla or Ramza, I would be terrified of this card if it had those names because of that. So then the next thing that you have to think is, use it with the black belt. It's actually less than the black belt. It's a 2CP 8K. You can have 2 cards in hand, just ditch both of them, and play this off of your top deck.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very big difference than the black belt. Very big difference. And you can now proc Laswell on demand. I didn't draw a knight this turn, and I have, the whole gang is on field. Well, I don't have Beatrix. Ditch the 2 cards in hand. Rather than draw a card, I'm going to Dull Freeze your backup. And that's going to be better anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm developing a threat that kills you next turn. Which Leo doesn't do. A lot of times in that situation, you would just cast a Leo or a Surges.
True.
This is just better Surges for the deck a lot of times.
Yeah, that's true. If you have Laswell out, yeah.
So I hate this. This is my singular favorite Final Fantasy character. This is the reason I am playing the game to begin with. And she supports a deck that I hate playing against.
So look for the full art version on his wall coming soon.
Yeah.
Well, so one of the big consensuses from the last set when Limit Break was introduced is just how terrible the water limit breaks were, that no one ever used them. And so we were all praying to the devs, hey, can we get a good water limit break? And finally they listened, because I never saw a single Leo cast or Tidus. Complete sarcasm, by the way, in case you couldn't tell. This is Lunafreya, and I don't like this card. This card scares me. So it's the same power level as Noctis. It can't, at its worst, it says grab the best card of the next 5 in your deck. If there's no requirements, there's no restrictions, so it can't whiff. It's not like, oh, you didn't see any 3 costs, you can't grab anything. With this card, can you really brick on backups anymore? It's okay, you thought that Sid was good. Oh, I didn't see any backups. Mulligan, no backups. Well, turn 1 Lunafreya. Let's see if I can find one. And because it's Limit Break deck, you pitch 3 cards for this. So if they Amaterasu it, they pitched just as many. You actually just broke even. And then, for some reason, if the card you add has my favorite mechanic in the game on it, EX Burst, you just get to use it for free. For free. So, I didn't find a backup. Oh, there's Claris. You know what? Not only will I add him to hand, I'll just go ahead and activate him and use him right now. Oh, there's Tyro. I'll just go ahead and search out a forward now. Oh, there's King Tycoon in my Warrior of Light deck, but I bricked and didn't see my backups. I'll go get Lena and Ferris now. Oh, you were going aggressive against me? Whew, good thing I hit that Leviathan 6. I'll just go ahead and bounce that, and I'll get that back. Just why? Why would they put that text on there? This card would have been great without that. Again, with just... comes from your Limit Break, reveal 5, you grab the best card. I don't want to see this, man. I don't want to play against this, man. I just don't want it. Go ahead.
So, I'll be slightly less doom and gloom. I do not like the design space this card is leaving. I will lead with that. I don't like the sackiness of this card. The difference between this card hitting Thornton and hitting just a non-EX burst is night and day. You can't even compare the two. This card is it's a 1-card backup chain. If you get a Claris, you search Edgar, and then you play the Claris, you get King Tycoon, then you Edgar in the Lena from the King, after with the thing. It's absurd. Why? What? However, here's the copium coming out. This is Limit Break 2.
Yes.
This does sort of force water into not using Tidus, or this becomes a Limit Break 3. This becomes the other Tidus that could have passed that.
Mm-hmm.
that sort of does matter. It means that they can only Leo once or twice, or do this twice. You know, like they can't Leo 3 times and do this. Like, there are legitimate costs to using Lunafreya as your limit break of choice. I am a little worried in practice what's going to happen is my deck has 20 EX bursts, I play Lunafreya. My deck has 10 EX bursts, I play Leo.
Yeah.
Or you go to a 2-deck format and one deck plays 2 Lunafreya and the other deck plays 3 Leos.
Yeah.
Those are things that can happen, unfortunately, with this card. That I don't like the thought process. And I don't mind the first ability at all. Or it even said, like, if you hit the EX burst, draw a card.
Yeah.
I wouldn't like it if you took that, but, like, in a lot of situations, if you took the card with the burst, you're actually not happy to take the card with the burst.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you took, like, Leviathan 6, for instance. When you're playing this early, you don't necessarily want Lev 6 outside of the fact that you trigger it for free, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to cast a Leviathan 6 off of this. So, like, maybe that would have been, like, a design space that does, makes you feel better about it. I don't know. Get your Lena stonks in, because it does proc Lena as well if they play this and they hit the burst off of it. That's considered a burst, so Lena can now theoretically draw you 7 or 8 cards in a game now, because goodness knows Lena didn't draw enough cards.
Yeah. Yeah.
she wasn't good at that.
To touch on the design space too, one of the many frustrations about like the 4-color Refuge Control Warrior Light deck is it's naturally just stacked with so many EX bursts. So like I just I find that mechanic frustrating, and so now to have a card that says, hey, I'm going to reward you even more for just piling your deck full of these cards, it just sounds
well, and it's annoying that it feels like bursts are almost like a necessary evil at this point, because you die so fast to Knights.
Mm-hmm.
You die so fast to 13. If you don't hit a Kakullan, or just an EX burst that draws you a card, or that kills something, you just lose the game against those decks. You can't match the speed at which they kill you.
Yeah.
Without randomly getting draws from the damage sometimes. And I've kind of come around on like, well, it sucks, it's sacky, but I'm playing worse cards in my deck to accommodate that. And maybe that's what aggro can do, is it can force these control decks to intentionally play relatively bad cards in their deck to slow them down.
Mm-hmm.
But this now just like removes the downside of playing shitty EX bursts.
Yeah.
Pardon my French. Like, this hitting Thornton is just going to be like so format. Like, do you just play 3 Thornton in water decks now and just I'm gonna spike it off Lunafreya, and like if I draw it, I'll play it because I'm why not? Like, again, the more I've thought about it, the more I've done deck building, the better the limit breaks this set have felt, because I'm making decisions on my limit break deck. And it's not as easy as it was last set. And even Lunafreya doesn't change the map significantly on, well, now I throw 2 Lunafreya in my deck as opposed to the 2 Leos or 3 Leos next to. I'm still making a lot of very interesting decisions surrounding what my limit breaks are, which is what I want from the mechanic to begin with. The design space this card touches on is scary.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, sir, let's close it out with our final card of the set and our final limit break. This is Mr. Luso. He has a light limit break, which I think is just infinitely more useful than the little Leela we got last set, because he just does something on entry, and he helps backup fix you. He's not quite as like straightforward as the Lunafreya, where you can just jam him out turn 1. You do need to have another character on the field. Ideally, you probably want a single backup, and that way you can play him on curve, and then you just go search out whatever's relevant for you. If you're in water, hey, go search out your Loprate or your Astrologian. Hey, you're in wind, go search out Viera. I think he's a lot better in something like wind, because wind doesn't have a bunch of other limit breaks it wants to use. Water, as we know, has so many good limit breaks that maybe you don't want to spend one on Luso. I also find his second effect kind of fun, that he's not just like this 5k that's just kind of stuck there. Then he technically can bump up enough if you play the standard unit to like push through a little bit. So yeah, he's really cool. I really love this art as well. I'm glad it got a full art, because it looks really, really pretty. So I think this is a lot more interesting than the little Leela was last set.
When I first started reading the card, choose a character you control, I thought he was going to become that element to try to reduce the synergy with Medine.
Oh, I gotcha.
I was like, they're so scared of Medine, they're going to make it where he becomes a different element as he enters. But he doesn't. He just helps. Like, there's so many random things this card does really well. First of all, this is the wind hero.
Yeah, right.
Like, we can just establish that at this point. There's, you know, you may run a copy of Death Gaze. You're going to run a copy of, you know, Sid Highwind, just to like, I have bricked. I have no other option, you know. But this card is so good in mono.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good in, hilariously, it's good in water.
Yeah.
Just because Loporrit, like, you can build a water deck with 12 backups, and they all be standard units.
Yeah.
And you're happy to do that. I think this enables a lot of other kind of strange things. Most Realm decks that are playing Atomos have to play 2 copies of Atomos, because Atomos is one of the Skarneth I was talking about. If you draw Atomos, it turns off Realm playing Atomos with the deck.
Right.
What you can do instead now is you can play this to guarantee access to a Loporrit. So now you can Loporrit the Atomos back into your deck so you can Realm it out.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's expensive to do that, but maybe that, like, the fact you can still do that guaranteed means I don't play 2 Atomos anymore, which is actually a huge benefit. This is a crystal backup for any deck that needs the first crystal to resolve. Robo Akbel is a huge buff from this card.
Yeah, that's
you can search out the Geomancer, right? And then, like, you know, I went through the list. I mean, the Crystal, the Grahatia, getting access to any of the Category 14 backups for him is huge. The Evokers, like, allow you to pitch him to you pay one of its color, discard it, draw a card.
Mm-hmm.
They can kind of do that if you, like, absolutely need to in a pinch. You can get the Water Summoner back if they get back a summon. So you can, like, double Medine with this card. Or the Water Summoner that cancels. I love that I go back to Water. Water is just so unholily broken at the moment. Samurais. The Search of the Samurai backup. And Samurais are, like, one of the few things that, like, play standard unit forwards, like, happily.
Yeah.
Like, there are good standard unit Samurais. Dragoons, this can help you get that next Dragoon if you don't have one yet. Without clogging the deck for
Alice, yeah.
Alice, yeah. This gets monks for, like, Ursula. You can, like, search the monk and then discard it to play for an Ursula later. Like, it's like tribal support. It's kind of funny. Like, I just kind of like this thing this is like the Luso effect when he's not casting 7 cards and killing you. He's, like, trying to be this, like, we work together card. Like, the one that, like, checks the elements you control. There's the one, like, reveal the top 5 cards of your deck and then add a FFTA2 character. I don't know. It's like kind of a fun direction for Luso to go that I didn't really anticipate.
Teamwork makes that dream work. Well, folks.
One more thing. Also, this enables Medine for mono wind, which is horrifying. The fact that Wind can play 3 copies of Medine with no cost associated with it, effectively. You're ready to lose a lot of Refuge into the Void to that card.
I'm still not convinced on that over Shinryu, but you are correct. They can.
We play both. Play Shinryu and Medine.
Why not both?
I mean, you're going to cry when you open 6 light cards, but, I mean, there is no more efficient removal spell in the game than Medine.
Yeah.
And for no conditions, no cost, it goes. It's gone.
Yeah.
Get it out of here. You can't get it back. There's no timing restriction. Build a backup. That is gone. Forever.
And that is quite strong. Folks, that is it for Opus 23 Hidden Trials. Thank you so much for sticking with us watching it. I know this is a long one, but I hope you enjoyed just spending time with us and going over all these cards. I want to thank my co-host here, Mr. Ghoul02. Sir, where can they find you? I'll have a link to all your socials and everything in the description below, but go ahead and give your shout-outs.
Yeah, on YouTube, I'm Ghoul SRL, Twitch, Ghoul02. Looking to do a lot more streaming, although I'm also dual streaming, so either or will work. Come say hi. I also do a lot of tournament reviews where I review deck lists for what's winning, what's doing well, tier lists, things like that. So.
He's got a great channel. Feel free to check it out for even more Final Fantasy TCG content. Let me know in the comments below what's your favorite limit break, which cards were we way off on, which ones were we dead on. Let me know. Always appreciate hearing from you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much. Enjoy Opus 23. And until next time, take care.